Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hoops and Stuff podcast. I'm your host, Isaac, and today I'm joined by a special guest, Nate.
Yo, what's going on?
And today we're going to be going over the top 10 QBs currently in the league, and obviously it's just all going to be starters, so let's get right into it. To start off, for my honorable mentions, I have Tua Tagovailoa, and for him, I just feel like this year he could have a good year, but it's really hard to tell just because he had multiple injuries last year, multiple weeks that he was out with injury. So it's really hard to see what we're going to expect out of Tua this year. But I do feel like he has a pretty elite receiving core with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, which could work out for him. But it just really depends on how he comes back from these injuries and how he bounces back. Another honorable mention that I have is Geno Smith. I do really like Geno Smith. He had comeback player of the year last year. I just don't think that he is top 10. I think that there are better QBs than Geno. Other people probably disagree, but I just feel like my top 10 can't include Geno just because he isn't high enough of a level of a player. Now, to start off at number 10, I have Kirk Cousins. I just feel like he has the best wide receiver in the league, and he has so much experience in the league. He's been in the league for quite a while now. Probably 10 years at least. Yeah. And he knows his head coach really well. He was with him. I'm pretty sure he was his quarterback coach in Washington when Kirk Cousins was on the Washington, at the time it was the Washington Redskins, which is now the Washington Commanders. So that's going to help him connect easily with his coach just because he knows him pretty well. So that definitely helps, I feel like.
For my top 10, I put Geno Smith. He was comeback player of the year last year. He did lead Seattle to the playoffs, which that's why I put him at top 10, because I thought he was a really good quarterback last year. And yeah.
At number 9, I have Dak Prescott, who has a solid wide receiver with CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup is pretty solid. But he does throw a lot of interceptions. He threw 15 interceptions in 12 games last year. And Dak Prescott is a player that I really hate just because Nate is a pretty big fan of Dak. So I definitely got to hate on Dak just for that. And I just really don't like the Cowboys in general. But CeeDee Lamb is a great player, I can't lie. So that's the only thing holding Dak in the top 10, I feel like, is CeeDee Lamb. Because if he didn't have CeeDee Lamb, then he wouldn't be able to do much, and he would definitely not be top 10 for me, in my opinion.
So at the 9, I put Trevor Lawrence. He did lead the team in the playoffs last year. Now they got Calvin Ridley. If Calvin Ridley plays good like he used to, maybe they can go to the playoffs again. They did have a solid defense last year. Let's see if they still have it.
So at number 8 is where I put Trevor Lawrence, and so far I feel like he hasn't really done much to prove himself, but I think that he will do so this year with a wide receiver, like Nate said, Calvin Ridley coming back from suspension, who was great before he was suspended for the Atlanta Falcons, and they have Christian Kirk, who was a solid wide receiver last year, and Zay Jones did pretty good, at least towards the end of the year last year, and altogether, this is a pretty solid team. Like Nate said, they have the defense. Trayvon Walker.
Yeah, Trayvon Walker.
That they drafted last year. He is supposed to be a really good tight end, or not tight end. He's supposed to be a pretty good defensive player for them. So I do really like to see how this Jags team works out, honestly.
At my number 8, I got Justin Herbert. He did get injured last season, so maybe he could come back better. But also Keenan Allen got injured, so they could have a good comeback season. He does have a running back, Austin Eckler, so he could be handing off the ball to him a lot too.
At number 7 is where I ended up putting Justin Herbert. Nate did make some pretty good points on why he thinks that Justin Herbert should be number 8, but I think that he's just a little better. And I mean, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are both solid receivers, and the only problem is that, like Nate said, Austin Eckler is going to be getting the ball quite a bit probably. And with that, that's not going to add anything to Justin Herbert's stats, just because all he's doing is handing off the ball to Austin Eckler. But with a receiver like Keenan Allen, who had an injury last year, we don't really know what to expect out of him last year. He had a solid end of the year last year once he came back, and Mike Williams had a pretty good year. So I'm pretty excited to see what Justin Herbert ends up doing and how good his receivers are. And honestly, this year the Chargers might run quite a bit just because Keenan Allen might not be at that same level that he's been at in the past. And Mike Williams might have just had one lucky year.
At my number 7, I took Aaron Rodgers. He did get traded to the Jets during the offseason. And I think he might be good because Garrett Wilson is one of his wide receivers, and Allen Lazard went to the Jets too, so he does have a connection with them. And they do also have a pretty good defense with Sauce Gardner.
Yeah, but the thing with Aaron Rodgers is like he's getting older, so that could also factor into how good he plays. So I mean, maybe he's top 10, but I don't think he's that high in the top 10 list. I mean, I'm a big Packers fan, so I was pretty big into Aaron Rodgers, but I just don't think that he's going to be able to perform at a great level. I think he could be solid though, maybe top 10, but I think he's going to be just out of the top 10, maybe 13, maybe 12, somewhere around there. At number 6, I put Justin Fields. I feel like he's just so underrated, and he is a great runner at the QB position. I mean, he can scramble with the ball very well. He's a player that's comparable to kind of like a Lamar Jackson, I guess, with the running ability they have. And he also has a pretty nice arm, which is something that I feel like Lamar Jackson lacks. I think that Justin Fields could be the next Lamar Jackson, just with a better arm. And DJ Moore will provide a great wide receiver for Justin Fields. I mean, he's had Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool as his best 2 receivers since he's came to the league. So I'm hoping that Justin Fields has a better year than he had last year. I mean, he had a great year last year, but I would really like to see Justin Fields make it to the top and eventually maybe one day win MVP. Like I said, he is a really great player, and even though I'm a Packers fan, I still like Justin Fields. He's the only Bears player that I actually like, and I refuse to say anything good about any other Bears player, but Justin Fields is just different for me.
For my number 6, I got Dak Prescott. I know he threw a lot of interceptions last season. He threw 15 interceptions in 12 games, but maybe this season, since he's all healthy, he's not injured, he could have a good season with CeeDee Lamb, and then they could have a good defense.
I mean, honestly, Dak's probably gonna go throw 20 interceptions in 17 games this year.
On.
Keep it real. Dak is not. There's no way Dak is top 6.
Bro, we literally got Brandon Cooks now. Our wide receiver core: CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup.
Bro, the only reason you have Dak at number 6 is because you're a Cowboys fan.
Bro, no. He's literally gonna be top. He might be top 5 this season.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Dak is top 10, but I don't think that he is. I don't think he's anywhere near
10.
6. I think maybe he's 8 or 9 at most.
I think he's gonna be top 5 at the end of the season. I'm telling you.
I mean, CeeDee Lamb.
They're gonna make the playoffs. They're gonna go to the Super Bowl.
CeeDee Lamb is a good receiver for Dak, but I just feel like Dak isn't going to be able to get it done with just CeeDee Lamb by himself. At my number 5, I put Lamar Jackson. He's a great runner, and Odell should be a pretty solid receiver this year for Lamar. It might take him a little bit to get used to the team with him being out for the last 2 years. But I think that eventually Odell will get back into his rhythm and he will have a pretty great year with Lamar. I think that Lamar's problem is that he's never really had a great wide receiver besides maybe Marquise Brown. But I feel like Odell is going to bring out the little bit of arm that Lamar Jackson has. I feel like he's going to be able to throw a little better this year with a great receiver. And they also have rookie Zay Flowers, who is looking pretty good, honestly. I do really like Zay. and he is another pretty good wide receiver that could help out Lamar Jackson with his throwing.
For my number 5, I got Lamar Jackson. They did get Odell, like Isaac said. He is coming off an ACL injury. But I think they might be able to go to the playoffs this year. Their defense is pretty good. I don't know. But they do have the rookie Zay Flowers. He's been doing really good in training camp. But yeah, that's why I put Lamar at 5.
At my number 4, I have Joe Burrow, and at the end of the season, I may regret this just because Joe Burrow had an injury, but right now he's healthy, and hopefully it stays that way, because if he gets injured and he's out for the rest of the season, then this is just going to be a terrible take. But Joe Burrow obviously performed last year great, and I mean, he's had injuries, he's had like season-ending injuries in the past, but I do really like Joe Burrow. He has been a Super Bowl contender with a team similar to this one before, and he has a great receiver with Jamar Chase, who is still young, and Joe Burrow is also young. So they have a pretty young duo with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, so they could be a team that we see in a couple of years going to the Super Bowl, and they were just in the Super Bowl, weren't they?
Yeah.
That was like what, last year? Was it? No, it wasn't
It was
last
the
year. It was 2
year
years.
before.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I mean, they've had Super Bowl experience already. So I feel like they could definitely make it back in the next couple of years. But I just don't think that Joe Burrow is going to have a better year than the next 3 players that I'm going to talk about.
For my number 4, I also had Joe Burrow. He did get injured during training, during the off season, but I don't know how he will play because of that ankle. But let's hope he doesn't get injured like Isaac said, or else it will be pretty bad. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase have a great connection together, so they always play good. But yeah, let's just see how he does.
At my number 3, I have Josh Allen. And at the number 3 and number 4, I was flip-flopping between him and Joe Burrow. And just with the fact of Joe Burrow's injuries, I had to go Josh Allen at 3. He's a great QB on the run. He can make it work. And Stephon Diggs is a great wide receiver, but he had problems with Josh Allen last year during the playoffs. And so I just don't really know how their connection is going to be this year with coming off of that playoff loss. And hopefully they can make it pretty far. I don't like the Bills at all, but they do have a good team. I cannot lie. So hopefully they can make it pretty far. I feel like they could be one of the best teams in the league this year as long as Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs can connect like they have in the past.
For my number 3, I also have Josh Allen. He was a top 5 player in the MVP race last year. He did play pretty good. He also had a lot of interceptions last year, but maybe he could be better this year. I don't know if the connection with him and Diggs will be good because they had a little argument during the playoffs because they lost, but let's just see how they play out.
At my number 2, this is going to be a pretty hated on pick, but I have Patrick Mahomes.
Sure.
Yo, like, this kid is, oh my God, he just loves Patrick Mahomes a little too much.
I don't like Patrick Mahomes, bro.
Well, it seems like you're pretty biased towards Patrick Mahomes right now.
I'm not.
But I have Pat Mahomes at 2, honestly. He was MVP last year. Travis Kelce is one of the best tight ends in the league, if not the best. Actually, I'd say it's probably between him and Mark Andrews, maybe George Kittle. But I'd say Kelce is definitely the best out of those 3. And that crazy sidearm throw from baseball is pretty amazing. That's all I can say about it. I mean, if you know anything about Patrick Mahomes, you know that he used to play baseball, and that was actually his main sport. So he does have a pretty nasty sidearm throw, and he can throw from many different angles.
Yeah.
So I do feel like that definitely comes in handy for Pat Mahomes with throwing the ball. But I just feel like my number 1 has to be better than Patrick Mahomes this year.
For my number 2, I got Jalen Hurts. He did lead the Eagles to the Super Bowl but he couldn't get the Super Bowl championship, which is kind of crazy because Patrick Mahomes is the best. But he did lead the team.
You're tripping, bro.
He did lead the team to the Super Bowl. He did play really good with A.J. Brown because they got A.J. Brown that season. But, yeah, now they got DeAndre Swift, so they could be better. And their defense could be better, too. But, yeah.
At my number 1, I have Jalen Hurts. And, I mean, people would definitely hate on this pick. But, I mean, I have to have more of Patrick Mahomes. And I might be a little biased just because I have family who like the Eagles. But I have to go with Jalen Hurts 1. I just feel like he has 2 solid wide receivers that Patrick Mahomes doesn't. I feel like Patrick Mahomes really has one main target to throw to, and that's Travis Kelce. But with Jalen Hurts, he has 2 solid wide receivers with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And he also has Dallas Goedert at his tight end. And DeAndre Swift, if he can stay healthy, he has him at the running back. But Rashad Penny is his backup.
I think so.
So, I mean, that's also a pretty solid option. And Jalen Hurts was top 3 in the MVP race last year. So, I think that he could get the MVP award this year over Patrick Mahomes. But I feel like him and Patrick Mahomes will definitely be probably top 2 for this award this year. If Joe Burrow can play pretty good, I think that he could also be a contender for it maybe this year. But I feel like Jalen Hurts will probably bring the Eagles back to the Super Bowl, and I think that they'll definitely have one of the best records in the league this year.
For my number 1, I obviously got Patrick Mahomes. He did win that Super Bowl against the Eagles last season. He does have a great tight end, Travis Kelce. They did have good wide receivers. They did lose Tyreek Hill, unfortunately. They did have a good connection. But they also did have a great defense, which that's what led to them to the Super Bowl. But, yeah, that's why I think...
And they also lost Juju to the Patriots. So
yeah,
that's also another receiver going down the drain. But they have Skylar Mays that they picked up. I'm pretty sure that's what his name was that they picked up this year. And he's supposed to be pretty solid. But I feel like he's just going to take a couple years to develop, and that's going to be a problem for Patrick Mahomes, that he doesn't have any great wide receivers this year.
But let's just see how the wide receiver core is this year.
All right, guys, that's going to be it for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. And thank you to Nate for joining us today.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
And we'll see you guys next Sunday.